Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever you happenstance into this Truth Bomb riff. I am joined by the none other, the wonderful Eric S. Vaughn. Happy Friday to you, Eric.
And to you.
Thank you. We are recording on Friday, September 19th, 2025, approximately, well, let's just call it 4 p.m. Eastern Time. And thank you for making yourself available for an impromptu dialogue. But I thought, given, of course, what those of you who have seen us discuss our content before, you've noticed those wonderful framed posters of Star Wars in the background. My colleague Eric Vaughn, not only being a tremendous talent in his own right for everything that he does as a DIY, do-it-yourself kind of hustler of producing and writing and technical this and that and the other, but he's also a Jedi, and he's a Jedi from the long lens of the Force, and this has been his guiding light, I think, since I've known you, Eric. And given all of the things that are coming out as Fast and Furious, I noticed earlier today that Andor was trending on Blue Sky, and I thought that would be kind of a good place for us to start the dialogue. So let me set you up with this question, and then I'm just going to let you run with it. So just a couple of vectors here to consider. First and foremost, we've had an onslaught, of course, of what people are now suddenly discovering as fascism. I think a big sort of door that was left ajar that jarred everyone was Jimmy Kimmel being summarily dismissed because of his non-threatening statements that were, of course, I would say, following the same trajectory as what we saw with Stephen Colbert, and all of that stuff affects pop culture. But meanwhile, as it relates to us, of course, we've seen furtherance of things that are very close and dear to our hearts, all things mortgage fraud and Lisa Cook and the Supreme Court and the Federal Reserve, and today, Letitia James. But that's enough for now. But Andor, my friend, because
Yes.
I don't know what you're going to do and how you're going to do it because it's your free flow, but the floor is yours, my friend. I'm just going to listen.
Oh, geez. Well, there are so many different entry points. I mean, so I think I recall that one of the reasons why Andor is popping up on social media right now is that I think outside of Disney, like in the wake of all this, people are holding up signs that are citing Andor, saying like, "Did you not watch like your own show or something like that?" And there's something to that. I mean, what Andor does is that it tells the story of the rise of an authoritarian regime, right? And how the regular people, react. Now Andor, they're perhaps a little bit further down the road than we are at this point, but scarily, it seems like not that much further down the road. So yeah, so what do the regular people do? I mean that's the thing. If we're going to be kind of talking about Andor and taking our cues from that, one of the things that you see in the first season, right, especially as it pertains to the planet of Ferrix, is that you see the working class come together as community, right? And it is the strength of that community that basically kind of, has like that sort of was it a Tux? Who was the first person killed for in the American Revolution? Like Crispus Attucks. I think
Boy,
he was a
I thank
freed
you for putting
slave.
me on the spot. I don't think I'm aware of the first person killed in the American Revolution, but wonderful opportunity to learn. Tell me more.
Yeah, yeah. So there's an uprising. Can't remember exactly which town in Massachusetts. But I believe that the first person who was killed was a freed slave. As it turns out, and how this kind of connects back into Andor. Basically, you see the authoritarian regime coming in and basically messing with the lives of regular people, right? That's basically what kind of inflamed the colonists. Even though that's kind of like we need to come up with a better term, even though that's accurate on one hand, but it has kind of a negative connotation for sure. Um, but if we're thinking of them as the good guys in this particular case, that they were the ones who, the working class who were being taken advantage of. I mean, the American Revolution, I mean, the the Boston Tea Party was what? It was about taxes. And it was about unfair taxation, right? This giant corporation gets to have tax breaks while we over here, in Boston, weren't able to get any tax breaks. So it was corporate. It was basically the advantages that corporations have within the government over the regular people, that basically kicked everything off. And so it's sort of apropos that's sort of the situation that we're in today, right? Um, but man, when you think about how authoritarianism takes hold and how it's the citing of safety, protection, all those things, order. I mean, those are the things that are being sold, to the average person. And to the average person, that might sound great, especially if you're in a situation where, where you're disadvantaged economically. And so if you're disadvantaged economically, that means that you're more on a survival footing. And if you're more on a survival footing, you're not thinking about, you know, more effusive, empathetic things about society in general. You're just trying to figure out how to survive today or the next day, and so on and so forth. And so that automatically puts us at a more aggressive footing. I mean, and when that happens, you know, civil unrest occurs. And when civil unrest occurs and you have an authoritarian regime coming in and say, hey, don't worry, we're going to come in and provide order and control, and we're going to put all the bad guys away. You know, it has, that has an allure to it. And people go for it all the time. And I think it was Benjamin Franklin who said that I'm saying this is about Star Wars, but I'm talking about American Revolution all constantly here. But I believe it was Benjamin Franklin, and correct me if I'm wrong, who said that for anybody who's willing to trade safety for liberty deserves neither. And it's somewhere along those lines.
Or will
I
get
noticed,
none. So I think is to that effect.
right. Right. And man, that exact paradigm is something that is conveyed, in this sci-fi dramatic show, and it mirrors right where we are today. I mean, we're seeing troops marching down main streets of American cities where crime has been on the decline, right? I mean, we're and just causing havoc for zero reason other than the fact that they're projecting power. And that projection of power, is the point. It's like the safety and public order and stuff like that has nothing to do with anything. They're doing the exact opposite. They're making everybody feel less safe and they're creating chaos. So you know that whatever it is that they're selling, is not what they're providing. And so, God, here we are, here we are. Um,
Let
but
me
I
let
think
me
the
ask you.
important,
Oh, go ahead. I want to ask you a follow-up question, but please continue.
sure, sure. No, I was just going to say, but that's the important thing though, is that people find what they need in community, right? And that's exactly what we need to do. We need to build community, create community, and we need to identify with each other. It's like the biggest thing that they've done is that they've managed to split us. They've managed to take people who have very similar needs and interests, whether it's economic stability or, you name it. And then they've managed to use cultural issues to split us apart and have us like just attacking each other. I mean, you look at like the actual data that they scrubbed from the internet just recently, and you see that political violence, is something it's across the board, but in this particular era, I'm not going to say this is always the case, I don't know, I just don't have that data, but from the data that I have seen, in this particular era, by far and away, the largest source of political violence is coming from the right. That's not to say it doesn't come from the left, but it comes from the right. And that's like over the last like couple years, like recent years that we're talking about. Yet every single time that there's some sort of mass shooting or whatever, everybody is jumping in trying to say it's their guy, not our guy. And the same thing happened just recently with Charlie Kirk. Before anybody had any evidence of anything, everybody was saying that, no, it's your guy. No, it's your guy. And if that doesn't indicate just how completely split we are, I don't know what does. And it also is indicative of the fact that if we can learn anything from Andor, it's that if we're going to defeat authoritarianism, if we're going to find our way out of this, we need to stop doing that. We need to come together, identify the fact that we are the community, not them and us, and that we are the ones who are going to have to provide that sense of security and that sense of stability, because it's not going to come from the top down. That's the exact opposite. All they're interested in is projecting power.
I think that's a great runway into this dialogue, and I appreciate that. And given our journey, I would respond that this division amongst what you would call what could become community has been a problem for as long as we've been on our journey, which is a long time. I don't know how many times I've said people have got to come out of their silos. And we actually experienced firsthand when I was developing relationships with marketers initially to try to distribute the kind in smart ways. The first thing they said to us is, you've got to be in a silo. It's got to stay in one space. And that's
Yeah.
the system. Okay. And we could go into that, but I want to stick with the Andor sort of theme at the moment because I think there's a lot we could glean from this that's useful. Um, who would you compare Stephen Miller to as a character in Andor? And or
Uh,
Star Wars generally, if it's better, but maybe Andor.
I mean, I suppose he'd be Krennic, the Ben, oh, what's the actor's name? I can't remember, but the person who basically is the head of, he's kind of like the above the ISB and the person who's like the primary, project manager of the Death Star, right? And then there's that great scene that's in season early in season two, I believe. Was it season two or season? Where it's just like what was the big meeting in Nazi Germany when they were first getting together and kind of putting together the plan. I can't remember. It was
It must have been
it,
after the
it
when
was
everything congealed. Me, you mean? I mean, it was actually a Nazi party, like sort of after the development of all things Kristallnacht and the populism and everything else. When long after
right, right. They basically consolidated power, and then they basically met to figure out how they're going to handle, their various issues, right? And there's a scene that mimics that, where he's standing up they have the windows and the mountains in the background. I mean, it's a direct, reference,
it has
you
to
know,
be.
to that meeting, yeah. And where they're basically coming up with the plan on how they're going to on how they're going to uh, basically um, I don't know if this is a verb or not, but genocide Gorman, and figure out the best way to the best way to get it past, the public. It's like how do we have like this genocide of this planet because we have like resources there that we need, and make the public okay with it. That was basically the substance of that meeting. And that sort of kicks off the rest of season two. It's really rather incredible. And so yeah, I mean, if Stephen Miller's anybody, he'd be that guy because he's sort of like I feel as though he's more the architect of this shitstorm than anybody else. I mean, I as much as I might have my feelings about Trump. I mean, I don't give him enough credit to be able to put all this together. I think that he signs off on things, and I think that that they know that Trump is popular and that Trump will play ball. But he's not the evil mastermind here. I mean, I think that's more Stephen Miller and some of the other folks.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, I mean, I think you're right, but you're wrong from this perspective. I think you give Stephen Miller way too much gravity because, yeah, he's maybe there now, but
Mm.
he's an opportunist given everything that's been going on from the big players. And I'm going to get to that question in a second. But there was two things I want to unpack just briefly to address, and then move on to my question. The first was the resources discussion. I
Mm.
mean, like I just did an incredible interview with a woman by the name of Charlotte Dennett, who is I mean, she's probably one of the foremost experts in all thing Middle Eastern oil and Saudi Arabia and pipelines and CIA involvement and everything that's been going on really since World War One. And she made the case about Gaza being kind of one of these ports that have to, maintain its position of, unbelievable value for, in that reference, right? So I thought that's really interesting, given, what we're seeing in Gaza, given what we've seen in the Middle East, really, I guess, since World War II or before World War II for that matter. But going back to Stephen Miller and, really being kind of a chief architect, I, I'll say what you and I both know. He was, involved with the Duke, lacrosse scandal, in college, not thinking about this, although it does mirror certain ways that people get played. But of course, you and I know we had spent time of course, at the Hive of the Americans for Prosperity Institute, where we really had a front row seat to somebody who seemed awfully clever. And I asked that in the context of, well, where do you put the Heritage Foundation and the Koch brothers
Oh
in
yeah, God,
England?
yeah. Well, well, a little bit of what you said kind of kicked up something else in my mind. Something that I think is an interesting little nuance. Once again, I think looking back at Andor is that if we remember, so in Andor, the big mining disaster that killed Andor's family, that left only a few kids, alive, happened during the Republic era, right? So, and it was basically, I think that it was this clever little moment where we see how it wasn't that Emperor Palpatine just came in and changed everything all at once. It's that evil, that rot was there for a long, long time. And so if we want to think back to the Terrence Stamp was the actor's name, the Chancellor, before Palpatine. I mean, you might think of him as possibly being like a Biden character, right? I mean, a person who was, somebody who's for the Republic and wants the norms, the status quo, very much a status quo guy. But that didn't change the fact that there were atrocities going on throughout the galaxy. And it was because those atrocities had already been happening, probably for years and years and years and years, that it made the soil fertile for the empire to form. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to see, where the analogy is here. I mean, this neoliberal streak that we've been on, since, I mean, it was really I mean, I think it was Reagan that really kind of kicked us into the neoliberal era, for sure. I mean, the ideas and stuff like that were existing beforehand, but it's really him that kicked it into gear. And then, but it was Clinton in 92 when he realigned the Democratic Party from basically the the people who represented labor, to basically being another neoliberal, outfit. And so he went out, and the reason why he did that was because Reagan had done such a magnificent job of undercutting the unions that there wasn't that equality in campaign contributions. Like before then, there was like at least some parity between corporate America giving money to the Republicans and labor unions giving money to the Democrats. And because of that balance, labor had an awful lot, working people had an awful lot of representation in the Democratic Party back in the day. Now, not gonna, I'm not gonna be Pollyanna-ish and say that everything was great and ducky in the Democratic Party back then. It certainly wasn't the case, but general broad strokes, that was kind of the lay of the land. But when Reagan so thoroughly just decimated the unions, the Democratic Party were staring campaign contributions, that whole world, they were staring into the abyss, right? And so when that happened, Clinton basically said, "Hey, Wall Street, because we're Democrats, we can get away with shit that the Republicans never could. Like the Republicans try this, and there's going to be blood in the streets. But if we do this, it'll probably be okay." And that's exactly what he did. And from that point on, the Democratic Party basically just ended up becoming the Republican Party, Reagan-esque era Republicans. And then the Republicans trying to figure out which way to go, sure as shit didn't go left. They went way to the right. And we've been on a hard tack to the right ever since. And once again, like I said, I think that this is a beautiful little nuance that you catch in Andor by showing that the shitstorm was in existence well before the Empire took hold, and the Empire just took advantage of it and ran with it. And that's exactly where we are today. This MAGA movement and the Republican Party have simply taken advantage of the framework that both parties had been setting up for decades.
Man, I love that because I always say that nothing happens in a vacuum. Everything is a continuum, and but yet we have this 24-hour, outrage cycle. And one thing that I'm so pleased that you got back to what I'm trying to maintain is the analogy here to Andor, because two things that really build into that predicate discussion. Earlier today, I happened to watch I'd say a really compelling and a thoughtful, and I'd say inspiring in some way, podcast sermon, if you will, from Mark Elias. And he spoke for about an hour. And now, Mark Elias, of course, the former general counsel of Hillary Clinton, who has been notably involved for many years with former Attorney General Eric Holder, but at the moment is kind of a force in his own right because he and his team and they are deeply involved with battling in all of the voting districts around the United States because of gerrymandering and so on and so forth. But he gave this speech. It was just like, I'm going to cut to the chase, is basically what he was saying. He was like, we're living in an era of lies, and we have to tell the truth. Everybody has to tell the truth. We have to come clean. We have to be able to expose everything that's going on, right? To be able to turn the tables on this madness. Except here's one of the main problems, right? As we both know, that Eric Holder was probably seminally responsible for everything that we're in the midst of, beginning with our story, of course. And so
Yes.
I'm going to dovetail to two African American women that many people are responding to at the moment, and justifiably so, but they can't quite see the forest for the trees because, of course, if you buy Mark Elias saying that we have to tell the truth, well, he's actually sitting on top of the con, quite frankly. And I don't want to disparage Mark Elias, but it's part and parcel to this argument you just made about the continuum, right? And when I look at an African American Fed board governor by the name of Lisa Cook and all the things that are happening with Trump trying to convict, accuse, indict, all of those things through this whole menagerie of illegal usage of lawfare, but also using FHA. And I could get in on the technicalities of it, but
Right.
it's the lie, deny, switch the blame, and implicate scenario for Lisa Cook. Okay. But also, what's trending right now alongside Andor is none other than Letitia James, the state AG of New York, who proved a mortgage fraud Goliath case against, of course, all things Donald Trump that we could go into all sorts of, you know, detail because we know it probably better than anyone in the country, especially how she didn't go to Deutsche Bank as being actually involved, but that's not really what I want to drive home at the moment. But the question I want to ask you is you have Letitia James, Lisa Cook. I wonder if you might give whoever's watching this your reaction to considering who those two people are in the system and what we discovered with Addie Polk, and then maybe bring it back to Andor if it's relevant or if it's natural.
Oh boy, okay, so that's let me think about that. I mean, so one, the mortgage fraud, I mean, was that we talked about in the con was just the mechanism that they use for extracting wealth from poor people. And that's the number one thing I think that we can draw from this is that poor people, and when I say poor people, I mean like the bottom 99%, it's like the vast majority of us, um, are a commodity. We're like oil, right? I mean, they just drill and extract. And as long as there's like any oil in this basin, this oil being like money, wealth, they are going to drill into that wealth and extract it. I mean, you go to some sort of like oil field. What you do, you drill down, you extract the oil that you know is there, and you keep doing it until it's empty, and then you move on to the next field and the next field. And I think that if you look at American imperialism, that that's what we've been doing as an imperialist nation, or former colonizing, whatever you want to use, and we've been extracting from everywhere else. And I think that we've run out of places to extract. And so in recent years, they decided to look inward and say, well, tell you what, we got a lot to extract here, so let's start drilling here. And what was sort of counterintuitive about Addie Polk and this whole thing was the idea that poor people actually had a lot of wealth, um, in the aggregate. Any one person didn't, but when you put like thousands upon thousands of people who have their modest little 20, $30,000 house, that ends up being a lot of money. And of course, how finance, works is that, you're able to collect a little bit of money, then you're able to loan out, much, much more than that because of how, capital reserves work and blah, 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 blah. So here we are. We're continuing to be extracted. We're a commodity. In Andor, it was what was it? It was deep substrate foliated calcite, I believe, was what they were having to get from Gorman in order to complete the Death Star. And they were doing it under the guise of energy, as an energy programs to provide energy for the entire galaxy and transform the economy. I mean, once again, the writers were pretty damn clever, in that because you can see, how those things like cut across, you know, and uh and so yeah, so Addie Polk, and so many people, yourself, right? You know, became the subject of that drilling. And so, yeah, they don't think, I don't think that the most corrupt people in the highest places of power have any sense of the humanity of regular people. We are just a commodity, or in many cases, a number on a spreadsheet, right? And that's how we're treated. It's like we might as well be oil. We might as well be, natural gas. We might as well be timber. You name the commodity. That's what we are. And as long as we have any wealth, they're going to try to extract it. And that's what they've been doing. And so, how do you do that? I mean, that's where the lies come in, right? I mean, that's where the lies and that's where the pitting us against each other, really comes in. And on that, since we're trying to keep this about Andor to some degree, one of the other bits of news was that it recently won an Emmy, for writing. And here's a little bit of one of the speeches, that was in the most recent season. of Andor, and tell me if you think that this is applicable. The distance between what is said and what is known to be true has become an abyss. Of all the things at risk, the loss of an objective reality is perhaps the most dangerous. The death of truth is the ultimate victory of evil. When truth leaves us, when we let it slip away, when it is ripped from our hands, we become vulnerable to the appetite of whatever monster screams the loudest.
Wow.
Right? And
Do you remember the first words that I proclamated? Well, it was in the first paragraph or so that I proclamated in Forward 13, Waking Up the American Dream,
the very first words.
that are relevant to what we're saying. You got a lot going on.
When I'm thinking about Forward 13 and I think about words, the thing that I always think about is the my name doesn't matter speech, that you had, and the fact that let's see, what was it? Let's see. I'm not. Oh, come on. And don't tell me. I'm not expendable, and neither are you. Right?
That's what we started our journey off with, and that's what we buttoned it up with in Zuccotti Park. And then, of course, Adam brought in, one of the most compelling sorts of positionings of all time. If you can figure out how we went from of it by the people to of by and for the corporation and corruption, I'm in. Bada bing, bada boom, and we've been on it ever since. One thing I want to ask you before we jump off into the kind of the closing aspects of this for this dialogue, which I find incredibly compelling. Wow, thank you for this insight into Andor, because I think it is very important for people who are fans of Andor to really be able to kind of extract, because the writers were fantastic. And by the way, we have seen this throughout Hollywood for quite a while now,
All
right?
right. Well, art imitates life, right? I mean, that's the main thing. I think you need to stop thinking about, these things simply as like television shows, like a silly Star Wars show or something like that. I mean, it just happens to be that in this particular case. But there's so much writing, there's so much art that's out there, that are speaking to these issues. And it's the most important aspect to our civilization. I mean, that's what makes us that's when you think about what positive things has humanity contributed to this planet, one of the few things that I think that I can say is like truly something that we added, that we've given to this planet, into the universe, whatever the case might be, is art. Because art is the piece of us, and quite often the most beautiful expression of who we are. And Andor just happens to be one of those television shows that has elevated itself to the realm of art. And there's several others, I mean, to be sure. But that's just one of them. And art does amazing things.
Well, I mean, it's kept me sane, really. Some of the different television series that have come out, what I think is a renaissance, particularly in these genres. And I'll add, even though we're talking about Andor, but just on my personal list, I put Peaky Blinders, I put,
Oh yeah.
Breaking Bad, I put Game of Thrones. There's no question of that. And I'm probably leaving out something, but those three in particular, in addition to Andor, have been just dramatic, unbelievable. Oh, I was going to say Succession, quite frankly, even though
Oh yeah.
I don't put it up there with those that I just mentioned, but in terms of the writing itself, the people who are writing these programs, they know what's going on. I don't know how they figured it out. I don't know who they were paying attention to. I don't know where they were getting their information. Maybe they're watching us, but they've got a really good grasp of the situation, and they float. And I'll even add Penguin, by the way,
Oh yeah.
which I
Penguin
thought
was
was
magnificent.
magnificent and got some Emmys, or at least it was nominated. It's a
No,
shame.
it got several. I think it won 8.
Yeah. Oh my God, do I love that? I think that's one of the greatest versions of what we. You can all extract everything that we're talking about, but going back to Andor and kind of a closing comment, because we're going to jump to another discussion here soon, and I could talk about this all day, and it's been really fascinating. But I wonder, given our journey from beginning to end here, really, and everything that we've seen and we've learned. And you might want to touch upon, even though you didn't answer it before, because this is what happens with these long-winded questions, of course. But again, Addie Polk, in contrast to Lisa Cook in her position at the Federal Reserve, and of course Letitia James at the AG's office, because people are saying right now that the victims of Donald Trump are those two. Now, granted, they are to a degree, but I guess maybe I'm leading with this. Compared to the Addie Polks of the world, it's like people think this just happened. What we're living with
Right.
is something that's been going on for our entire journey, which is now at least 14 years together, right? At least on this Odyssey, right? It's for me since the 2008 great financial crisis, which we just celebrated. I had to remember
Right.
the September 15th, 2008 anniversary where my whole life got turned upside down, inside out that led us on this journey. But I guess the last question is, do you ever kind of consider, given Andor, is there any parallels to our journey, do you think?
Hmm. I mean, that's a good question. I mean, I think that so you have like a lot of these characters who are operating sort of like underneath the empire, like the Mon Mothma character and Luthen Rael and Clea. Um, and you see how they basically have to operate in the shadows, you know. And I don't think that we operated in the shadows per se, but it feels very much that along with so many other, pieces of media that have been created, we have had a shadow cast over us. I mean, one of the things that's coming out right now, one of the things that's connected to, this most recent kerfuffle with Jimmy Kimmel, right, is the fact that he gets booted because Nexstar is trying to merge with, I can't remember what the name is, but their biggest competitor in order to have control of just a sickening percentage of the local media in this country. I mean, they're requesting, and the FCC is on the footing to grant them the the ability to have more than 39% of the media across this country. And when you think about ABC, who is the network, right? And then they license out their content to all these places like Nexstar. And ABC and Paramount are about to be purchased. Well, Paramount already is, but they're about to be purchased by a Trump loyalist, right? I mean, Larry Ellison is like the richest person on the planet now. I mean, he surpassed Elon Musk, recently. Now, granted, it's all through smoke and mirrors and all through, spreadsheets and, when all sorts of, bullshit like that. But nevertheless, there he is. And and that means that there's going to be an awful lot of control of all the information that we 99% get. That's going to be basically coming from Larry Ellison, for all intents and purposes. I mean, that's basically state media. I mean, we're entering into a 1984 sort of scenario, where the media is going to be just cranking out the talking points and silencing the voices of any kind of dissent. I mean, Jimmy Kimmel gets kicked off the air for what, a clumsy setup to what was like an okay, if even that joke. I mean, anybody who actually has information that's dangerous, that shadow is going to be cast over them. And so, yeah, I think if we're operating somewhere in that, yeah, I mean, just by the very nature of what we do, we're operating in the shadows because the shadow's being passed over us, right? I mean, you know, because the information we have, some people might think is dangerous.
Well, let me start with Larry Ellison here, based on where you're going with state-run media. I just found out yesterday on the front page of the New York Times from our friend who wrote the article on the front page of the New York Times yesterday. Of course, William D. Cohen, our friend, who's
Hmm.
inside the belly of the beast, revealed on top of what we know, Larry Ellison is involved with a bunch of other tech bro billionaires buying, of course, one of your best outlays in oh boy, what am I thinking of in terms of the Chinese? They're going to buy over not Twitter, not
Oh, TikTok.
TikTok. Jesus, I couldn't even think of TikTok.
Right, right, right.
But TikTok is underway, and then as it turns out, we already saw what happened with Paramount, obviously, and when I
Well,
think
think about TikTok for just a second. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I mean, one of the places where people got actual media and understood what was actually happening in Gaza was TikTok. That's why they want TikTok, because right now they don't control TikTok.
that's true.
As soon
That
as they get TikTok, you know what? We're not going to see, a bunch of Gen Zers overthrowing the government in Nepal, right? We're not going to see those anymore. We're not going to see what's happening in Gaza. We're not going to be seeing what's happening in these places. As soon as the powers that be take over TikTok, TikTok's no longer going to be relevant as a source of media. I mean, not that it should be, but it was the only thing running, right? Because CNN wasn't going to do it. Fox sure as hell wasn't going to do it. Any of the right-wing bloggers or left-wing they're not going to touch it. I mean, this was all user-generated stuff because, once again, community. We have to watch out for each other.
so. So further to that, which is extraordinary because the empire is getting bigger by the moment. Literally, William D. Cohen had revealed that they're looking to purchase Max as well. I don't know if you're aware of
Mhm.
that. As of yesterday, that's been revealed. Doesn't surprise me, but at the same time, it's like, okay, and what would be the methodology, and who would be the too big to fail banks that would be involved with that? Are the first questions that come to mind, given everything else that's going on. And when you were answering the question about as if there was a character that we might compositely be kind of analogous to in Andor, I think Andor or is the character, but the nature of our journey is that I think it's more analogous to Luke at the beginning of the first film that we saw growing up, right back in 76, 77, A New Hope, right when at the end Luke got inside the Death Star and delivered the miracle shot to the photon bomb to take down the Death Star. I mean, we literally have the information that this entire system depends on. We know the money better than anybody in the country. We know the law, except for those that are doing it. But we have all of these answers that we've spent over a decade aggregating and a lot of hard work, right? And we've got it first and foremost in our work that you can find at thecon.tv. But one of the other, my favorite, and it turns out both of our, as surprisingly, our favorite film, and we never knew that until recently, but which always blew my mind when I heard you say this out loud somewhere else. When I discovered this, I don't know why I never bothered asking you, but yeah, both of our favorite film is Indiana Jones, later Raiders of the Lost Ark, and of course, as you and I both know, that the key consideration, given everything we've learned, particularly as it relates to asymmetric information, was that key moment when, of course, Sala was with Indy, and they got the staff of Ra and the coin from the wise man that had both sides of the coin to be able to determine where the ark was. And Indy was flipping it up, and they both said at the same time, they're digging in the wrong place, which has been the story of everything. So now I'm going to really mix metaphors, right? We've got the Lost Ark, we've got the Rosetta Stone, we've got the Holy Grail, we've got quite frankly, I liken it to Arkenstone for those of us who are big fans of
Yet another movie franchise.
right. You can extract from all of them, but that's literally what we're in the midst of, and there's so much more.
Well,
Go ahead.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I go a step further and say that whereas the media might be looking in the wrong place, The most corrupt powers that be haven't been. They've known exactly where to look. They've known exactly where to get the money. They've known exactly how to make sure that they're the only beneficiaries of that money and how to make sure that they can make more money off of everyone else by keeping that money away. And so that's what makes our message dangerous, to these powers that be, is because we're willing to show the rest of the world what they know, their secret. And they've been keeping it a secret, right? I mean, they know how to extract money like nobody's business.
And more importantly, as I said, when you and I were on the road to Discovery, particularly in Forward 13, when we were approaching during our segue across the country, surfing the Occupy Wall Street wave, when we got to Washington, D.C., and on our way to New York, and I said to you, you know, Eric, it occurred to me that there's two columns of our soul. On one side, we've got hypocrisy, duplicity, and complicity. On the other side, we have integrity, courage, and dignity, right? And it's been this constant battle between those two forces. And I think that's history and that's fiction and that's everything that is humanity from the very beginning of time. And we're coming to a significant, scenario where if people don't discover our work, they can't see the forest for the trees. And so on that note, I'll just say, please continue to watch us and learn from us. We have a lot of information. We don't walk on water, but we are definitely the deliverers of information that a lot of the people in power do not want you to know. You can discover that at thecon.tv. You can obviously see behind me, check out thecleannewdeal.org. I would highly encourage you to check out Eric's work at Corruption Incorporated that you can see on YouTube. You can get it on a wide variety of social media platforms. But man, congratulations on all the amazing work you're doing, buddy.
Oh, and same to you. And one quick thing. You already said go to thecon.tv. Go there, register for more information as well. Because within a very short amount of time, and this is like some good information for you, Patrick, we are going to be doing a special release of Forward 13 to the people who register at thecon.tv. So please go run and register at thecon.tv, and you'll be one of the first to see the re-release of Forward 13.
Well, that makes me really happy. And I'll say to all the people out there that are uber paranoid, about giving their information to people, it's like people, we're providing you the story that makes everything happen. And there was a complete odyssey that we've gone on that the entire system is quashed. And it's a small price to pay to provide the information that we can give you more information so that hopefully you can share that information to be like in an Andor character, the community
Right.
that works within the confines of the empire, trying to prevent you from understanding this information. And by the way, it's free because all the American people really buy are lies, to be honest with you. So check out all our work. And I'll just say, like I always say, onwards and upwards. And thank you so much for tuning in. Eric, I look forward to talking to you soon, my man.
All right. Take care.